roof, a floor, something in between, very transparent, very readable, very understandable, and hopefully beautiful. I think the last picture shows what it is all about. It's about providing a good city, a living space, make these people a little happy as architects, engineers. I think that's the aim we are aiming to. So thank you very much.
Well, I think that was spectacular. Maybe just a few minutes of questions?
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll break.
Back?
The back?
Hi there, I'm Rob Kingsbury. I just moved to California in the last 2 years. I heard a statement about a city being livable, about it being more livable by having housing, people living. And so then I thought about the concept of a campus. And then I thought about healthcare. And then I thought about sports. And then I thought about all of us being together and eating and being healthy and being around plants and clean air. And I'm going, why do we segregate all these? Why do we put the college over here, the hospital over there, the grade school over here, the business area down there? Would it make more sense if we as children grew up around, closer related to, where business is, so when we grew up we would be more sustainable people and make less risky, concepts? And so how could architecture help us with that, in our education and our growth?
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's a competition of ideas at the end. We had yesterday evening a discussion about democracy and dictatorship. If a dictatorship is much more successful maybe sometimes, like China is today, or is supposed to be or expected to be, I think that democracy is much better in the long run because you have many concepts and they're competing with each other. And if you do a failure, it is a smaller one. If a dictatorship does a failure, it is a big one, and you can't get it back. If you compare, for example, New York with Shanghai, you are not far away with Manhattan from an ideal city. I mean, you might doubt that, and you might see a lot of disadvantages, but I see a lot of advantages about that. If you look to in an aerial view to New York, the last 200 years would be quite the same. And if you look from the Hudson River, it has changed dramatically. The reason for that is private property, because you have that small, relatively small properties. The city grid is very stable, and the quality of the street and the quality of the public space is quite stable. If you look to Shanghai, for example, the only reason why they had changed the city so tremendously, and they could do that technically, was there was a dictatorship decision. And they just overruled everybody else. And so they ruined the city within 10 years, or even less years. And if they do it good, okay, wonderful. But if they do a failure, the failure is, how do you call that? A giant one, yeah? And you can't get that back again, yeah? So I think when you're talking about that mixture and that vitalization and that bringing things together, yes, we had a lot of silly ideas in the 60s about segregation, and that is wrong, simply wrong. That was based on endless availability of oil and things like that. Intelligent people in the 50s, 60s knew already that this is not the case. There was calculations done, and even if they were not just 100% right, generally they were right. It's an ending resource, and the kind of desperately depending on oil like our societies in Europe and America are, this is a shame. This is really a shame. They should have done better. But it's not too late. I mean, we have to change that. And I'm not claiming that we are doing the right things. I just say we try quite hard. And if everybody tries, I think that is the only thing we can do.
One last question.
Can you comment on Germany's decision to subsidize solar panels and how that might be affecting your practice and architecture?
Yeah, it's difficult to explain. I mean, they did that for a while. I mean, they do still, but they lowered the support. Because they found out that solar panels are not the only solution. Again, I mean, you have to have many solutions. Generally, it's about fear. The Germans had that kind of being afraid about a war again. And if you remember the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, the beginning of the Green Movement was originally about fighting against American missiles being positioned in Germany. That was the origin of that all. And that was about fear. And then the second aspect was some hippie aspect in a way, because they were very much oriented on that what we call muesli, yeah? Getting healthy food and things like that, which is very important. But again, it's about you, yeah? Your fear, your health, and things. That is how it all started. And then I think in '81, the Green Party was founded, and it was in a way really natural to vote for them. I mean, I voted for them for 2 decades, and they were seen as being leftists. They were never leftists. They are also today they are not leftists. There's a bourgeois party in a way, and they're very conservative in a way. And it took a while finding out that the conservatives are from the same side of the table as the Greens are. But I think it's going to happen to be a kind of common understanding that Green is not just a leftist position. It is a position in the middle of the society. And then in the mid-'80s, when they started to get into the government, they put all these things on the table, like supporting solar panels and supporting wind parks and things like that. I think there is one reason for it, which is honest. You can't say is at all economically sensible, but was all what we did about the oil industry economically sensible, or about nuclear power stations and so on? I think we have to put a little money on the table and testing these things and find out if they are good or not. You can't just stay with the oil industry and nuclear power stations and then expect the industry to invest the money in solar power and things like that. So I think that is a part of the diversification process, and it has been quite successful. I mean, the consciousness of the people is quite high, and they did that for longer than 20, 25 years. So they meanwhile quite experienced in doing that. My personal experience is the Americans and maybe also the Australians, are a little bit more enthusiastic even about that. For us, it's part of normal life. Sometimes you even forget to talk about that. For example, you had the much better rating system with LEED. We followed you 10 years after because we thought it is not necessary in a way. You're much better with marketing. LEED is much better than the German system in marketing issues, in addressing that to the people. I think that is a good news. You can see that very critically, but I see it very optimistic, because I think if that gets to the end user and you can influence with the end user political decisions, that is the right way to do that. And so you can't really say that the Germans are on the front of it. I don't think so. It's worldwide. Our experience is that all around the world, Japan, Australia, Singapore, wherever, people are very much interested in that. And the movement is faster here than in Germany and in Switzerland.
All right, so since it's 1:30, I'd like to close today's event, but first another big round for Christoph. Also, I wanted to give a special thanks to Whitney Paybody from our office. Talked to her about 5 weeks ago to try to pull this event together, and with help from the USGBC and others, she did it. So let's give her a big round. And finally, on your way out, there's a little table on the side. There's a recycled bag here that you can do some shopping when Union Square as you head out the door. It's made from recycled milk cartons. So thanks so much for everybody coming today.
We actually talked about all this. The site outside. Yeah. We have a section that shows us. Yeah. We just did.